Hi, everyone. We are going to start in just a few minutes. We're just waiting for more people to join, and then we can get started.
I like that logo and what it
Mm-hmm.
says.
Mm-hmm. That's Lydia's.
Nice. Oh,
Yeah.
she made that in sewing.
Yeah, it's a wall hanging that she was making.
It's nice. It's very attractive.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You, for those in the room who don't know, Lavinia, who was just commenting on this wall hanging, Lavinia, yourself, you are a world-renowned artist and you make wall hangings that are known all around the world. And we've been in meetings before with people that I we haven't or I wasn't familiar with, and on the back behind them was your wall hangings on the wall. We've seen them in a lot of different spaces here, but yeah, this one was developed by Lydia in Akvit, and we'll jump into that perhaps maybe. And should we give it just 2 more minutes, Deb? And
Yes, I see more people
yes,
joining. So let's wait
okay,
until 12:02 and then we can get started.
that sounds great.
Um, but maybe in the meantime, I can give a very brief info. Up, I'm seeing more people. But welcome everyone, especially if it's your first time joining our grand rounds. My name is Deborah. I'm the Knowledge Mobilization Officer at CanWatch, and we're the coordinating center for the Pan-Canadian Women's Health Coalition, which is a coalition of 10 hubs who are working on under research areas in women's health and doing really great work. And so over the past few months, we've been hosting these grand rounds monthly, trying to spotlight each and every one of them. And they're sharing what's so specific, what's so innovative about their individual research. And today we're really, really excited to be joined by the Inuit Perinatal Health Hub, um, with its PI, Dr. Patty Dunstan. And today they will be sharing with us their work, and more specifically on bringing the human back into research, meaningful research relationships with Inuit communities in Nunavut. And so we're really, really grateful for you, your team, to join us today. And I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Deb. And hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're thrilled to have this opportunity to talk to you a little bit about our work. And before we begin, as just as Lavinia was commenting, if you the what's in front of you is you're seeing a wall hanging, which is a beautiful way of representing learning and understanding and a big part of the work and the research that we do. Um, some of the work that we do is really framed within what we refer to as arts-based methods. But this was developed by Lydia Mukinek in Akviat Nunavut. It's part of a much larger series of wall hangings that she's developed. Um, and they're beautiful and they represent her learning, her understanding, her experiences of growing up and living both on the land and with her family. And her understandings around Inuit culture for pregnancy, birth, parenting, raising children, and living a good life. Growing a child is a lot of what she uses her art to explain. Perhaps we can do some brief introductions, and then Lavinia, I think perhaps if you wanted to start us off in a good way, did you want to? Would you like me to introduce you, or would you like to introduce yourself today?
Yes. Um, Welcome everyone, and I'm glad I could make it to be here with you on this Zoom. Sometimes I miss it because I travel quite a bit, and then there's quite a lot of activities going on in our own community, being a growing community. So I'm here with you, and I'm going to listen a lot because I might have quite a bit to catch up. But anyway, um, I really appreciate our coming together, and it's so important that we get this information out to the communities somehow. Um, I think there's more coming on stream with us. There's enough members that are on the circle, so that's always good to know. Um, what caught my eye was when we talked to Senator Nancy Lindell Kagetak. I was surprised that she hadn't heard anything, and perhaps we have to give out more information and get some feedback and some support from the Inuit organizations. It's so important that Inuit organizations such as KIA or NTI, and there's other boards too, be supporting us on this program, on this research, because we certainly don't want to be left behind from Nunavut. We need all the services, information that we need. So, yeah, I'll just sit back and see what we have to discuss, what we have to plan.
Thank you, Lavinia. And can I offer a quick little introduction that Lavinia Brown, for those of you who don't know, Lavinia Brown is an educator. You're a healthcare worker. She's got an honorary doctorate from the University of Manitoba. She's been so many accolades I can't even raise here, but at one point you were the deputy premier of Nunavut. She was a minister of health and the first female mayor of Rankin Inlet in Nunavut. Lavinia's fought for health and social services and the rights of Inuit her whole life. You're also a residential school survivor and a mother and a grandmother and a great grandmother, and an incredible philosopher and leader and director of a lot of the work that we do. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. So Lavinia, we're thrilled to have you with us today. For those of you, my name is, and I didn't even introduce myself. Who's this woman talking? My name is Patty Johnston. I'm with the Faculty of Social Work at the University of Calgary. I'm a Kalanat. I'm a non-Inuk individual I'm originally from British Columbia. I've been grateful to be educated and supported by Inuit women throughout the North for the last 20 years, over 20 years. And one of my most dear colleagues is sitting here with us, Marianne, and maybe I'll hand it over to you, Marianne.
Ulaka, good morning. My name is Marianne, and I'm happy to be here this morning with Lavinia and Patty. I'm Inuit and from Iqaluit, Nunavut, but I've been in Calgary a long time, and my two kids have been born and raised in Treaty 7 territory here. So yeah, I'm just joining from Calgary. Happy to be here.
So we'll tell you a little bit about our work today. We started, and let's see if I can move us along. A lot of our research that we're going to talk to you a little bit about today, and a lot of our learning really goes back some time. I mean, for myself, I have been working in the community of Akvit in Nunavut since 2014. And what you're looking at here is a group of women who refer to themselves as Nanas Arviat, which means mothers of Arviat. A lot of our work started with talking to women about what they wanted for their communities, what kind of research they wanted to engage in, what kind of supports they needed, what they were looking for us to support them with. And going back to 2019, we received some funding to start doing that. And from some of that work, it led to the Inuit Perinatal Health Hub application, which you're going to hear a little bit more about today, our Inuit Perinatal Health Hub, which was never intended to be called that. That was just our placeholder name, but it stuck, and so now we are the Inuit Perinatal Health Hub. But we also were starting work along the lines of a project that was called Keeping the Children Home. And at that time, this project has really it has grown and grown and grown to the state that it's more than a project now. It's much more than a project. It's more a movement and an initiative around ensuring that that Inuit families can remain together, particularly during things such as medical travel, and to reduce and in fact, eliminate child apprehension, particularly when Inuit women are down accessing health services in southern or urban communities, but in general that they're positioned to thrive within their own communities and culture. And a big part of our work, as you'll see on the side, is that work in the North, work with Inuit communities, we believe requires these three strong components. And one is obviously the actual research itself, which is always participatory. And when we say participatory, we don't just mean a little, we mean highly participatory. We try to make sure that everything we're doing involves Inuit in communities where we can. We're trying to engage young people in the work that we do. All of our research has to necessarily also involve a focus of advocacy and social change. That means that for Inuit, it must be useful, it must be relevant, it must be intended to improve the social and economic and material circumstances of which Inuit live and support communities, serve communities. And the third kind of focus of all of our work is always around community building. And sometimes that's referred to as like capacity strengthening, but it's really about ensuring that we're linking people, we're supporting social networks, we're ensuring that people have the skills and the access to the information and the knowledge that they require to live their best lives. So that's a little bit about our kind of background. And before, what you're also seeing here is also just it's part of a support network of women that all have come together. But this is really to also highlight the importance of relationships within what we do, because the research that we'll continue to talk a little bit about today could never happen if it wasn't for the relationships that we've been lucky to be able to foster. And that's Lydia there in the Rose's shirt on the left-hand side of your screen. She's the one who developed the wall hanging on the front. So a little bit about who Keeping the Children Home, the larger kind of broader initiative, who also are very engaged in obviously the Inuit Perinatal Health Hub and offering direction to all of the activities and the work that we do. You'll see on the left is our governing council, Lavinia. There is pictured on the left-hand side next to Tagak, who is another elder that works very, very closely and intimately with us. We are in contact regularly, as regularly as we possibly can be, I think, and far more so than a lot of, I think, research projects. We don't just meet with an elders council or a committee or an advisory committee once a year. We are regularly in touch with each other, and so you're also seeing some of our other governing council members. And you're seeing our youth advisory council, which is, we've been building a youth committee over the last couple of years. And this committee is, I think we've got 8 youth in it at the moment. And Lavinia, maybe I'll ask you to tell us a little bit about that, your most recent meeting with some of our new youth. And we've got staff at the University of Calgary, as you can see here on the right-hand side, those who have long worked and or are from or with Inuit communities. So we try to make sure that our doors are always open to hire and find and support those who are moved by this work. I did want to say that before I jump into a little bit more about, or we jump in a little bit more about our research, we always start from a place in our work of how can our research contribute to communities? How does our research serve Inuit? And we recognize that this is a very different way of approaching research from many who might come from what would be either a positivist or a post-positivist kind of research paradigm. We start from a place of what's referred to as an emancipatory research paradigm. We start from a place of thinking about how research can really contribute to support marginalized populations to ensure oppression is addressed through and in our work. We do this in a way to really want to, all of our work is based then in an epistemology that is really defined by the co-creation of knowledge, as opposed to seeing knowledge as objective in and of itself. That's not where our research comes from. Our research comes from a very different perspective, and we can talk a little bit more about that as we go. But I know that for those who particularly might be from a different research area or field or form of interacting, perhaps even working with cells or working with biosciences, it tends to be often quite different than the work we do, but I'm happy to kind of move through that a little bit as well if anybody's interested. Marianne, I think I'll hand it over to you if that sounds okay.
Sounds good. Yeah. So we know that academic researchers are often required to focus, on timelines, deliverables, and data collection, but communities are going to want to focus first on relationships, trust, and accountability, right? So in our work, relationship building is not separate from the research, but it's the foundation that makes the meaningful research possible for us. Some of our most important learning has happened outside of formal research activities through conversations, shared meals, community events, and just spending time together. So I'm not sure if these were first Patty's words or Saraswati's words, but we often say that our research moves at the speed of trust. It's very slow. As an urban Inuk who is at an academic institution, I would not choose to be part of this work if I felt it was extractive. I stay involved because the relationships are genuine, because community priorities guide the work, and because there is a real commitment to listening, learning, and giving back. So the meaningful engagement can't be rushed. Relationships in Innovate are built over months and years, not just days or weeks. And this means taking our responsibilities to communities as seriously as we take the research itself. It also means that our work does not line up well with academic standards sometimes around outputs. And, the approaches we often work with are, based in the process of the research, not just the results of the research. The process is really important. Ultimately, the goal is not just to document experiences or produce knowledge, but to respond to concerns communities identify as important and contribute to the improvements in systems and supports for Inuit families. The work is emotionally meaningful because the issues affect real people, real families, and our communities.
Thank you. And what you're seeing in front of you is Tagak and Lydia are explaining to a group of individuals in Edmonton about an amounti, which is a traditional Inuit women's parka, where a child can fit in the back to be carried by one's family member, not always mother, but mother, grandmother, whoever it is that's carrying the baby, but also some of the wall hangings behind. I think one thing that we really want to emphasize in this is that relationships, when we talk about building relationships, we don't use that description lightly, and often we struggle to even explain what we mean by that to other researchers, because the relationships that we work within are intended to be deep, often very personal, intimate, definitely, and I don't use this word lightly, like relational, in the sense that they are inherently like connected as from human to human, in a way that many researchers who have been trained in a certain paradigm might see that as unprofessional, or not distant enough, or not objective enough. And yet we find that we're always trying to explain that no, it's still very professional. It's still, we're still involved in the academic environment. We're still engaging in highly rigorous research. We're still doing all of those pieces, but we do it from a way that is heart driven and connected between individuals. And a big part of that is also understanding each other. One thing that I learned about when I first moved to the North wasn't necessarily about, people say, oh, you must have learned so much about Inuit. And I truly believe that the first real learning I did was about colonialism and understanding dominant worldview and Western understandings. And I still today feel that I'm always trying to make sense of how two very different worldviews interact or come together on certain areas and topics. And what you're seeing in front of us is Inuit Kamiya Tunkangi, which is often described as 8, but our group has just referred to it as, nope, it's 9 principles. And these principles, Tagak actually, and Lavinia, I'm not sure maybe if you want to speak to this too, but Tagak has referred to these principles not as principles, but as practices, ways to live, ways to engage, ways to how to have a good life, how to interact with others, and how one should, for us, do our research, engage with each other, engage with others. And so when we bring the governing council together, we always start with looking at so we say IQ principles. We always start with these and really try to center our work around specific principles on a day-to-day basis. So it's that we're trying to practice them and live them within our work in real time so that they're not something external or separate from what we're doing. Part of that is, this is also where within our research, we not only get to know each other better, we get to understand how each other thinks and how we all can interact. And that in itself tends to build and support trust. This is a different way of interacting where kind of more conventional research has often brought researchers in as experts. And Inuit have long experienced research, both on them and in their communities and in their homes and on the land, where outsiders arrive and assume expertise. And so we try very hard to flip a lot of this around where we try to approach this in a much different way. And that's why Lavinia, you hold the knowledge, you hold the expertise, you hold the understanding around Inuit Kamayaja Tungkangid and everything around Inuit culture and Inuit life. And as a result, the research team, we are always just learners. We're just lifelong learners that are here to learn and co-create knowledge, but also to document and to share and to disseminate the work that we do. One really great example, and I think Lydia was sharing this with us just recently and to a larger group in Edmonton, and I think it stands out. And Marianne, we talked a bit about this too. Within Inuit communities, custom adoption is a very significant part of community life, and for many people in Southern contexts who might begin from or have a more Western dominant culture worldview, understanding custom adoption can be a little bit confusing or not fit with their understandings of raising children or having children or family or pregnancy. It doesn't. And so as a result, we've been talking more and more about how it serves as a really, really important example and a reminder for individuals to see things differently and to be able to shift to learner, shift to a place where one can better understand another's worldview and therefore culture and therefore ways of knowing and being and therefore practices and therefore what might be needed and what might be desired and how that can be extremely different depending on where one is. And that is very much the case when we are in Nunavut. We share what we're learning. So a lot of our work concerns the working with Inuit women around their perinatal care needs and their priorities. And a big part of that has come out of our initial learning is that women desire more information. Women who from the Kivlik region, where Lavinia is joining us from today, 80% of which end up in Winnipeg to give birth. And they are there for anywhere from 3 to 8 weeks often prior to giving birth, where they must remain at a boarding home typically. And it can be a very isolating and lonely experience for many women. And despite this happening, this process of what's referred to as maternal evacuation occurring for decades, women still, even in 2024, were telling us that through a survey that we conducted that they didn't have enough information about that there was fear and nervousness and about leaving the community to go give birth, that as despite it being a standard practice, institutionalized and in policy, there was a lot of confusion and a big need for information around that. Lavinia, I wonder if I could hand it over to you to think a little bit about when we talk about sharing knowledge and and information with women. In your experience, we're a different kind of research team. We do things a bit different. Is there anything that you would like to offer or suggest, either on the topic of our research or even just in how we operate? We say that we do a very human-centered approach to research, but I wonder if there's something that comes to mind. You've seen researchers in your community and in the North for forever, and what stands out to you in terms of what we do and how we do it, perhaps.
I'm always forgetting to mute my audio. So anyway, it was so completely different way of life when I was growing up to what it is today. We talked about earlier about Amauti, the ladies, where they carried a baby. That piece of garment was meant to be a survivor outerwear and inside wear. It was so designed perfectly to adapt to the weather, because we had about 12 seasons, not four like we have today around the world. But talking about the Amauti, there was a thinner with less fur that was against the skin, and it was worn inside, and the outside had thick fur, and they had much bigger, higher hood than this what you see now. That hood was meant to be to keep the woman, the face, everything warm with the fur, and it had to be very high because the air and oxygen's going there steady, so the baby in there have room temperature warmth, not too hot, not too cold, but equal amount of warmth for the baby. And the sleeves are usually wide because the mitts have to go inside there, and the air have to flow in there, so the body doesn't sweat, because we're talking about two pieces of amautic. The outside skin is very thick, and we lived in a very, very cold weathers, like 40, 50 below zero. And the baby in the back couldn't sweat because they just knew how to handle it, so the baby doesn't smother in the back, stuff like that. And that's that amautic. The other thing that was evident when I was growing up, but it was taken away. We couldn't use it in school anymore, but there was a lot of cultural activities, and we lived by our lives. One of them was throat singing, and our elders used to say throat singing was meant to be to call the animals, because the men had to go travel so far away by dog team to find their game, their animals, and sometimes they were gone for 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month, depending how far they had to go. So the women, they believed that if they call the animals, they'll come closer, and the men wouldn't have to go so far out hunting. So that's a theory that I'm aware of, but today it's used for ceremonials, but the idea is still there, even if there's things that have been modified. The idea is we still own it as Inuit, that throat singing was for a purpose, and that's why you sometimes you hear that harsh sound from the throat, calling the animals. But we're adaptable, and we appreciate the youth carrying on their culture, their tradition, even if it's modified, because it's their way. And there's a lot of things that have changed over the years. And for instance, the research goes on because we want to be included in the studies and we want to make sure that we hear the outcomes of the research, and it's so important that it keeps going on, because without the research, we will never know the end results, and it takes years sometimes to find the end results. Earlier, I'm not very good in introduction, so I had forgotten to introduce myself. I just went right into the story, I guess. But I am from Rankin Inlet. It's about 2 hours and 20 minutes direct flight from Winnipeg. So, okay, Patty, I'll leave it there. I'll give it to somebody else.
Wonderful. Um, I think what you were just saying, Lavinia, is so critical. It's about Inuit being involved and directing, really leading, ensuring that research meets the needs of Inuit, but also is what Inuit want, how Inuit want it to happen. I was struck by, being in a space last week where all of the research at a certain conference was dedicated to the health of women. And I made the comment about that to someone, and they said, well, like that's what's wrong with that. And I said, well, because within many of the Inuit that we work with, women are not seen in excluded or as separate from children and families. And so research, we tend to engage in research that is much more holistic. So even when it's about women, it doesn't exclude pregnancy, babies, children, families, communities. And even we, are often talking about how that relates to the land and spirituality and all of these different components. So the importance of having Inuit in spaces, particularly where a certain kind of siloed approach to thinking about research is really critical to thinking about the questions that are asked, how the research is framed, and then how it's carried out, and as a result, how the outcomes are used. Big part of that is why in our research, women have been telling us about how they not only want better information, they want to be more prepared around childbirth. At the moment, most people within the Kivalliq speak Inuktitut as a first language. Many individuals are unilingual. And so access to, online English perinatal resources aren't useful, and aren't necessarily culturally relevant, don't connect with women's lived realities, don't connect with how they engage and work and live in the world. So as a result, we're learning that the co-development of perinatal educational resources is critical to support women and also to have better health outcomes. And a big part of this, I'll hand it to you, Marianne, is the opportunity to start building resources with women. And what was suggested to us is this VR immersive technology. And Marianne, I'll hand it to you. Talk a bit about.
Yeah, so the IQ principles that Patty talked about. So recognizing and respecting Inuit knowledge systems like IQ has important implications for how the research could or should be conducted. The VR resource is going to combine traditional knowledge with practical elements. So community members have helped to determine what the VR environment should include, what information should be shared, and what traditional knowledge should be incorporated. We've worked with community in kind of determining what it's going to look like and how it's going to go. So for example, in this picture in the top, it's a snapshot of the 3D rendering of the kitchen engineers have developed for us. And they are able to incorporate some country food there just on the floor. And in the scene, the VR user is going to be able to listen in on a conversation between the pregnant person, a grandma, and other family members when they talk about traditional naming practices, for example. Practically or clinically in the bottom photo there, that's a draft snapshot from the 3D rendering of a triage room from one of the hospitals in Winnipeg. So the VR application is going to start from the safety of a home environment, and users are going to move throughout the home where they can watch, listen, interact in different spaces in the home, and they'll be able to listen to conversations between the pregnant person and, it could be a mother, grandmother, friend, or their partner, and they'll be able to pack a suitcase to get ready for that trip to Winnipeg. And from that home environment, they'll also be able to teleport to the airport, and see what it's like walking from the plane to getting their luggage and to getting to the boarding home. They'll also be able to teleport to hospitals, just like in that bottom photo, where they can see what the hospital setting looks like, and hear from a doctor or interact with a nurse to learn more about what the admission process is going to be like around. Learn more about the admission process, learn more about pain management, consent, labor and delivery, and those kinds of things. So it is combining traditional and practical information, but it's kind of all come from Inuit women in the communities letting us know what information they need and what they might want it to look like. I think that's good for that slide, Patty.
Thank you. I should
And
mention that
then, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and a big part of this is reducing anxiety for women during their
Yeah.
travels. And as particularly as stress is as we know, is a key contributor to preterm births. And we know that Inuit women have the highest rate of preterm births in the country. Sorry, over to you.
All good, all good. No, this is a recent photo from when a couple of researchers were able to head to both Rankin and Arviat. Lavinia, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about your experience when Robin and Gail joined you and kind of talk about what it felt like doing some of that work with the youth. Would you be interested in sharing a little bit? You're muted there, Lavinia.
Sorry, I'm
It's
always
okay.
doing that. Okay. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. The gathering with the youth, the advisory committee of the youth, um, certainly was evident that they enjoyed themselves, and I know that they're at an age where they're really learning a lot. And this gathering with the youth proved to be a very informative, and and I think the youth enjoyed that so much, like they were happy and talkative too. The exercise that opened it up more was the icebreaker, and I realized how much it was helpful to each one of us, where we started talking with those 5 questions that were imposed on each one of us. It just got us talking and learning about each other. And even though I live with these youth, I don't see them in Rankin Inlet because they're busy in school and learning, and every day that they're at school. And of course, the parents and us, us elders are busy too. Quite often, we're at home and not really going out because we're busy at the house. And it taught me something about the youth, that the youth are happy to be with elders and with the adults. They seem to like to mix with us, and they were not shy. They were very welcoming, and it was a learning experience for me that by going to school every day and being involved with this kind of work and with the elders, that it's a very healthy aspect of our community life. Um, and the youth have strength that I noticed, and the strength that they have is that they're going to be good leaders. They already are in their own way, and they're getting such good education. And this type of collaboration in the community and with our teams is very important to give back to the community and the youth, because they talk among themselves and they educate themselves. So it proves to be that we're all working well together for our future, and there's a lot of work to do. And I found out that the youth are interested and they want to stay with us, and they were not shy. That's one thing that I really saw and appreciated, because when we were in their age group, we had no voice. We couldn't speak our own language, and we barely spoke English, so we were silent. But these youth are growing. They have growth and development with their education, and I'm glad, Darren, with this research practice that we're in. We have to grow together with the community and with the Southern partners. So I'll leave it there. I hope I give you enough information, and maybe later on I could speak some more. So I'll give it back to you.
Thank you, Lavinia. I appreciate and I love just how, myself and the youth, we always have so much to learn from you and Tagak. So I appreciate you also being able to say that you're learning just as much from the youth as the youth are learning from you. So it's definitely kind of an exchange there that happens. It doesn't just go one way. So it's really beautiful to hear that. So the VR project I kind of just spoke about, it's one example of what community-led research can look like maybe in practice. Too often communities are invited to participate after research topics, questions, methods, the analysis have already been decided, but it's critical to include community in those discussions right from the beginning. And the VR project began through conversations, like Patty said, with women who described, being scared, uncertain, worried about being isolated when traveling south to give birth. And rather than arriving, or coming to a predetermined solution to what research might look like, we listened to those experiences and worked together to think about what might be helpful and meaningful for the Inuit women in the North. So community members were also emphasized that they wanted the VR resource to be interactive and technology based, so that it could be more engaging and accessible, especially for young Inuit parents, like Patty said. I think she mentioned, we've got the youngest population for highest pregnancy rates in Canada. So as a result, the project was developed collaboratively, drawing on community priorities, Inuit knowledge, and ongoing relationships. And Inuit parents are involved through the entire research process, from identifying priorities, research design, data collection, interpretation, dissemination, and knowledge sharing. This helps to ensure that the research is relevant, respectful, and useful to the community. And as a result, we have no shortage of people that really want to work with us in the communities. And Patty's often asked, how do I get into Northern research? By people who might be out there and interested. But that question kind of misses something really important. The long-standing trusting relationships create opportunities for the meaningful research to happen, not the other way around. It does take a long time to kind of do this work in a good way within communities in Nunavut.
I'm just conscious, Deborah, of the time, and I'm wondering if we kind of, yeah, should we? I'll just. Oh no, we do have a little bit more, but maybe we'll bump along perhaps a little bit quicker, just to make sure there's a few minutes left for questions. But one of the big pieces that, yeah, Marianne, you were just talking about is the connection with individuals and the way in which we do this work and how just different it is. We often use the term kind of storytelling, and I've said that I kind of struggle with this, even though we do use stories, but often it's often that kind of can sound rather structured to individuals sometimes, particularly within research fields that engage in research in kind of southern or urban locations where people to get together and there's kind of a time and space for telling stories. When we talk about storytelling, we're talking about a much more kind of fluid and flexible kind of way of interacting. And one example of which, and here you're seeing this Lavinia on the screen, and our dear colleague Rosanna Marjuak, and Lavinia's daughter Mani Brown, myself at a conference in Vancouver. But one example I was thinking of just recently, because it just happened a couple of weeks ago when we were together. We spent 4.5 hours in a condo in Edmonton on the floor, poring over conversations and information associated with Inuit concepts of perinatality and worldview. Overall, that means both epistemological understandings, but also cosmological understandings and axiological understandings. So as we're trying to really find a way to articulate and make sense of, and then also be in a position to communicate and share. And this has many reasons, but it does look extremely different than how most people might envision research. And as a result, as you mentioned, it doesn't fit so well typically within research grants in quite the same way, or expectations for research in quite the same way as conventional research, I should say.
And here, I just want to talk quickly, researchers may be tempted to look for a single narrative or, a unified Indigenous perspective in lots of different topics and areas, and they may try to fit what they hear from their past understandings of the world or working with Indigenous communities. But similar to First Nations communities across Canada and Inuit Nunangat, Inuit communities are diverse as well. And experiences differ by region, community, generation, family history, language, material need, sociocultural opportunities, and personal experiences. There's lots of diversity across the North. And Lydia, for example, shares that her story is not everyone's story. But while our stories and experiences might be different, people might still encounter similar barriers or challenges within health systems, social services, policy, environment, or even research processes. So these shared patterns kind of help us identify where change can happen.
And just following up on that piece, when we start recognizing where and how change can happen, that's also within research. So that's also part of this. The title of this, the conversation around bringing the human back into research is really that the responsibilities that researchers hold to engage in relationships is not it's not a time limited 5-year project of which your relationships start and cease, where individuals, as soon as the funding runs out on this project, that your relationship see, that's not how this works in any way, shape, or form. And it's really, so it speaks to the commitment and the responsibility to the communities, to the people that we're working with, to the people that we care about, because it's at a depth of a human connection level. And that's something that often, isn't always as consistent with other forms of research. So some of the other kind of responsibilities that we have, say, to funders or to, perhaps our faculties within our institutions, and the ethics that we rely upon, well, those all matter. The truth is the relationships with those that enable the work to occur matter more. And so we prioritize that, we privilege that, and we put our efforts and energies towards that first and foremost. That means that our research priorities are based in the community, not in the academic priorities. We really look at how the community's expertise and knowledge guides our decision making. We're always talking about how do we return findings to the communities in real time, so that research isn't held separate from communities. And we aim to create resources with communities that are useful and ensure that communities can see themselves in the work at all times, that there's pride and confidence associated with being a part of this work. We want to make sure that individuals see themselves reflected in everything that we do, and that our communication and relationships continue ongoing, regardless of funding structures and different kind of typical academic constraints, I should say. And I think I would love to maybe perhaps circle back to you, Lavinia, if that's okay, and just talk a little bit, just for the last few minutes here, about how lived experience really makes this research possible. When we talk about what women need, or families, those who birth, what individuals who birth need, we're talking about what they've experienced that leads them to understand what would have improved or ensured their wellness, their health, their better outcomes just generally. Um, and I'm thinking, Lavinia, about your experience both in the research and but also in talking with women and thinking about health generally in the North. Um, what you think about how our research fits within that, and whether or not you have some thoughts on how we can better improve the health of Inuit within Nunavut, in addition to what we're doing, in addition to involving them within the research that we do. Maybe I'll open it up like this, Lavinia, so we can see you a bit better.
That's for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you'd like to talk a little bit about just what you think about health research and the potential for improving the health of Inuit women, families, children, and young people in the territory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly. I I see that we have come a long ways, to interact with Southern people. In the provinces and southern places have more awareness of Inuit way of life now and having more knowledge about our culture, which is an ongoing learning thing with each other. We do the same as we travel south and learn their ways. So somebody had said earlier that it works both ways, and it's happening here. It's working very well in some areas, but there still need to be a lot of improvements. Simply because we're not really treated the same as other Canadians that that live in their own communities, that live in their own provinces. In Nunavut, it's very different. For example, down south, I had my own when we lived there for 6 years. When we retired, my husband and I, and in Winnipeg for 6 years, and pick up the phone, make appointment with a doctor. And we even had our own family doctor after being seen so many times, not so many times, but after living there for quite a number of months. Got my own family doctor. But in Nunavut, we don't have that accessibility. Our system is so different that we have to talk to the nurse first, and our primary caregiver is the nurses, not the doctors. Doctors are secondary after we're assessed or whatever. Sometimes we don't even get to see the doctors. There's not doctors in every community. It's the nurses that I guess nurse practitioners are the one that are acting like doctors with their profession like that. So um, the other part that I experienced is living in the north. I think I told you before I was interviewed by media, and the first thing we sat down being interviewed, that reporter asked me, first question, why do so many people from the Inuit go down south for medical? So many. That's the first thing he asked, and I was quite shocked about that and a little bit hurt. So I had to think fast, strategic thinking, and I told him that we're like anybody else. We're like you. We get sick too. And in the north, we don't have sophisticated diagnostic imaging or treatment. We don't have any of those equipment. So what do? We want to be like the rest of Canadians. The Canadians are treated that in that respect where they can have all that services. We don't, in Nuna, we have none. So we have to fly down for a doctor's consultant, a specialist consultant, all sorts of things. That's why so many people go down south for a different reason of their condition. And the other thing that I notice is that I think we are aware we don't have midwives anymore. We used to. And in Nunavut, I know in my region, everybody who's pregnant, gonna deliver, they have to be flown down at so many weeks. I think some of them, depending on their risk factor, if they're high risk, they're sent down even 2 or 3 months before the baby is born, and some are a little bit later on. But still, that's leaving the family, leaving the home, leaving the community. But I really like the images that was shown earlier, how information going to flow to everybody, especially in the north. We need that kind of information to educate us, to expect and to know what to expect, because it's so strange sometimes, and first mothers have to fly down there. They've never experienced that kind of thing before, a lot of them. And it can be shocking, it can be lonely, it can be scary. I know. I used to have to go have my babies down south, and nothing but emotional. My daughter, who was about 8 or 9 years old, and I had to leave them to have my child down in Winnipeg, and my daughter drew a picture, and the picture illustrated of herself with tears coming down all the way, all the way, all the way out to the door. And she said, "Mom, this is me when you're not here." So there are those things that happening, and loneliness, and not being able to be with the mom, not being able to be as a family unit. So these are very real to us in Nunavut. Um, um, I'm glad that your committee is doing this kind of research to reach out to the communities, and I'm just hoping the communities will have a chance to speak out of their own when we research, or when we ask questions to them. I know that a lot have to be said. A lot of things will come out, and it already have, through Lydia and through you girls. All of you have done a wonderful work coming up to Nunavut, and I hope it still keeps going. It has to keep going in order for services to improve. We lack so much services in Nunavut. When I became a minister of health in 2004, had to meet all the departments, all the staff, senior staff, management, and all those staff. I had to have a meeting with them, and it seemed like Iqaluit was the capital, and it grew overnight. And when I became the Minister of Health, they're briefing me about all the departments, and there was so much project, so much program going on all at once. So I did say that we have to slow down, and yet we have to keep up with the southern provinces, because Iqaluit is a city. So I had to kind of balance those thinking. We have to slow down in order for smaller communities to catch up. They didn't even have any doctors. Still, they don't have doctors. That's why we have to travel to bigger centers like Rankin and Iqaluit in our region, and sometimes over to Yellowknife too. In my days, the route was always north south, north south. If you live in Kivalliq, you go to Winnipeg. That's your center for medical services. If you live in Kittlemoot, your center was north south. Edmonton and Kittlemoon. Baffin over there, again, north-south to Ottawa and Montreal. It was never across, even though it looks like we should be up there in the Arctic, where we could travel from from Rankin to Yellowknife, or from Rankin to Iqaluit. No, there was no services that way at all. So there's quite a lot of work to do that we're facing with, and right now, what's coming out of your research, I like it. I like it very much. There's so much interesting and so much learning to do here, and some people will tell you, some people will tell us that we're researched to death. I hear that. And I tell them, no, we're not. We're not. That's why our service is so behind, because more research and more work have to be done. And and if there was no research going on, how are we going to find out what's needed, what our services should look like? How are we gonna improve services without the research? So I even said to myself, which came first, research? In terms of research, is it learning or teaching? And I said, if I didn't learn, what am I going to teach? So there's lots to learn. And I don't mind the researchers at all, because with that we get supported. We get, you know, we can go further and further with our lives. I hope I'm making sense here.
Beautiful, beautiful sense, Lavinia, always. Koyanami. I think, Lavinia, you just summed everything up so beautifully. I think that was the best way to kind of close, I think, and perhaps we can hand it to you, Deb, and if anyone has any questions, we'll go from there. Lavinia, Koyanami, that was very well said.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing your stories, for sharing your work. I think the one thing that I'm keeping from this whole presentation is, like, we're not doing research with numbers. It's every single person that we work with has their own story and has something to contribute. And we need to make sure that we keep that in mind. And something that I would love to invite all of you to do. So there's going to be a survey as you finish this meeting. If you want to connect with the hub to try to better understand how you can share those practices in your own work with the communities that you work with. Everything that was shared today is not specific to working with Inuit. It's something that is widely applicable to any communities that we work with in research. So how do we make sure, again, to go back to the topic itself, how do we make sure that we bring the human back into what we do? We're not just working with data sets, we're working with people, and in particularly when we think about the topics that we work on, we work in women's health. So it's something that is so personal. How do we make sure that we bring those stories to life in the research that we do? So thank you again so much, Tati, Lavinia, Marianne, for joining us today, and thank you to all of you for coming. We will have other grand rounds spotlighting the work of our other hubs. Please join us. Follow us on our different platforms to stay updated about when the next one is going to be. And have a great day, everyone. Thank you all so much.
Thank you very much to Canwatch and everyone for coming today, and don't hesitate to reach out.